Okay, we'll start with this. Unbeaten up-and-comer in the women's featherweight division set to return to action, and one of my favorite featherweights overall, Raven Chapman, will be boxing on the undercard of Hamza Shiraz versus Liam Williams, December 2nd, Queensbury Promotions show. Raven is a Queensbury Promotions fighter. Raven, who has already seen actions 2 times this year. She boxed 3 times last year, and by year's end, she will have boxed 3 times this year. So she's staying busy, staying active, climbing up those ranks, sporting a professional record of 7 wins with no losses, no draws, 2 knockouts.
Don't let the 2 knockouts fool you. She can punch, and she's aggressive. She's spiteful.
That's what I like about her. For me and my money, the top 2 seeds, the top 2 unbeaten up-and-comers in today's women's featherweight division, it's got to be between Karis Ardingstall and Raven Chapman.
Boxing in December.
Featherweight division, where Amanda Serrano still reigns as that division's undisputed champion, and she's set to see action very soon. Mandated WBO title fight between her and Danila Ramos of Brazil, the woman to beat at 126.
Got all the belts.
Interestingly enough, when last we saw Raven Chapman earlier this year, she was in action for what was a WBC International title, a lesser version of the WBC title. And she's not the only one going that route, going the WBC route. It just so happens that Sarah Mahfoud, she's WBC Silver Champion. Sky Nicholson, she's WBC Interim Champion. It looks a lot like the 3 of these fighters are on a collision course.
Raven's last fight.
Then unbeaten Lila dos Santos Furtado of Brazil. That was for a secondary version of a WBC title, WBC International title. Raven Chapman, she ranks in at 14 in the WBC's current featherweight rank standings. Beyond her upcoming fight, it's conceivable she will gain ground. You will see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of familiar names in those ranks. The name of unbeaten Tiaria Brown, Germany's own Nina Menke,
Germany's own Sophia Leash,
Daniela Bermudez,
former champion.
What is a prime example of what I'm always telling you, that the women's featherweight division in the next calendar year, next year, 2 years or so, it's going to heat up because it's a deep division, a deep weight class. Raven, she's a part of that scene.
See Carolyn Veer, Canada's own Carolyn Veer, who was in action not that long ago. She's there at number 7.
Argentina's Brenda Karen Carvajal, she's there at number 6. Raven Chapman, in time, could end up fighting any one of these fighters, any one of these aforementioned fighters en route to a Sarah Mahfoud fight or a Sky Nicholson fight.
Sarah's ranked at number 4.
Sky is ranked at number 1. Sky Nicholson, the WBC's interim champion. I don't want to spend too much time guessing who it is that Raven Chapman is going to be boxing on December 2nd, because it could be any one in these ranked standings. It could be any number of fighters, but it looks a lot like if she stays in the winner's bracket, she keeps fighting, she keeps winning, she may end up boxing either a former champion in Sarah Mahfoud or the WBC's interim champion in Sky Nicholson. Stylistically, I favor Raven to win the both of those fights.
The level changes.
The speed, the combinations, the power.
She's got power.
Raven Chapman has a good lead hand, good double, good triple jab to close the distance, get in safely, and unload. It's what she's good at.
It's not what I would describe as a jabber.
She has a jab and knows how to use it, a short jab. Stepping into it, eliciting respect from her opponents who often keep their guns holstered to not get hit by that jab, allowing her to close the gap.
It's going to force you to fight.
Stylistically, I think she has the edge over an economic pure boxer like a Sky Nicholson and Sarah Mahfoud. Sarah, more experienced than both, though not really big on power.
Nah, Yeah.
For now, keep your eyes peeled on the ring return of Raven Chapman December 2nd on the undercard of Hamza Shiraz versus Liam Williams, and we'll see who it is Raven ends up fighting. In other news, Tommy Fury says, I could not live with myself if I didn't box for a world title. And yet, here he is again, boxing another YouTuber, another social media influencer. The last one was Jake Paul. This time it's KSI. Is any of this intended to be preparation for a world champion or becoming one? Light heavyweight prospect Tommy Fury, 9 wins, no losses with 4 knockouts. He is still very much motivated to achieve a career goal of fighting for a world title. Fury will return to action on Saturday night in Manchester, where he faces social media star KSI in a crossover boxing match. Back in February, Fury picked up his most high-profile win to date when he outboxed another social media star in Jake Paul over a round. I told you after the Jake Paul fight, I told you, don't expect Tommy Fury, having made what he made in that fight, don't expect him to go back to boxing at the Copper Boxer, York Hall, against gatekeepers and journeymen in what would be developmental fights in order to develop him into a world champion. Don't expect that, because he's not going to do that.
Nope.
Fury is very motivated to follow in the footsteps of his older brother, WBC heavyweight champion Tyson Fury. The plan is to get through these YouTube fights, do what I need to do in this sort of scene, and I believe I am good enough to win a world title belt, Fury told PA News. I don't know when or at what division, but when the time is right, I'll go out and I will challenge for a world title, because I could not live with myself if I didn't box for one. I believe I can do it. I have the right setup around me, so why not give myself a best shot?
Because you suck.
Have you seen him? Did you see his fights before he fought Jake Paul? And did you see the Jake Paul fight? For me and my money, there was not clear separation there. A clear distinction between the social media influencer and the boxer. What's supposed to be the boxer? The serious boxer. The serious pugilist. For me and my money.
Tommy didn't make Jake Paul look out of place, but he was supposed to. Their fight was competitive.
He admits victories over Paul and KSI will not nearly be enough to put him in contention for world-level fights. These guys don't really call for me to step up to world title ability. I'm levels above these guys, said Fury. I could beat KSI after 15 pints of beer. I could literally go down the pub all day, fight him at nighttime, and still beat him. If we fight 100 times, I beat him 100 times.
And that's why he's doing it.
Do you think a guy who's making millions boxing, non-boxers, a guy who's making multi-millions boxing the likes of Jake Paul and KSI, do you think he's going to step into the fire when he doesn't have to? Tommy Fury made more from that Jake Paul fight than any fight he made before it, than any fight with any real boxer, any real gatekeeper or journeyman. So on that predication, do you think afterwards
He's going to fight real fighters?
It was George Groves that said, people in the industry say Tommy Fury is a pro boxer, but I disagree. I think he's a YouTube fighter. He's known for being in YouTube fights. And now he's fighting KSI, who is a YouTuber. He's not a boxer. Just own it. And I don't think this fight with KSI is as easy as they make it out. KSI's light and agile. He might be up for it, and he could outbox and outfox Fury.
Ahead of the Jake Paul fight, Tommy's role in all of it was he's supposed to be the serious boxer.
That fight was a little bit too competitive to me, as stated. Tommy didn't go out there and create clear separation, a clear distinction between him and Jake Paul. And here he is again, boxing another YouTuber. He didn't take any fights in between, though he could have.
He didn't.
The grift here is presenting Tommy as anything other than a social media boxer, a social media influencer, or at least an aspiring one, because he's not a serious fighter. He's not a serious boxer. This is not a serious boxing career.
These are not serious people.
Do you realize that Tommy Fury's making more money boxing these guys, boxing Jake Paul, boxing KSI, than he might make boxing the likes of Arsene Goulamarian at cruiserweight or Lunga Makabu? And those guys, those would be credible threats to Tommy Fury. So use your head. Why would he risk it all? Why would he risk it all on them when he's making so much money doing this?
Why?
Why would he? You think he's building himself up to a Jai Opataya fight, a Lawrence Okolie fight, a Chris Billum-Smith fight by fighting these guys, fighting these people?
The jig is up.
Tommy's no more a boxer than I am a Ninja Turtle.
You are an astronaut.
Downstairs at welterweight, the story is that Crawford versus Spence rematch is set for February. Terrence's rematch with Errol is reportedly set for February, early 2024, but the weight of the fight has yet to have been agreed. We heard rumors and rumblings that Terrence wants it at 147.
Why?
As a deterrent, he means to discourage Errol from pursuing the rematch by having it at 147, which he knows Errol can't make. He can't make it healthy anymore, and I don't blame him. I mean, given how the first fight played out, who really wants to see a rematch? Who really wants to see a second fight?
Not me.
And who would broadcast the second fight? Who would broadcast the rematch? Would it be Showtime like the first time? Or by next year, will Al Heyman already be in bed with Amazon? And will this be a part of their catalog of fights for the following year?
A pay-per-view.
Think about what fights that are rumored to be happening early next year. Gervonta Davis versus Isaac Cruz, their rematch, their sequel, a pay-per-view, and this fight, yet another pay-per-view.
Sounds like a distribution deal.
If we are to interpret these rumors and rumblings as the first signs of PBC's engagement with Amazon, sounds like a distribution engagement. I mean, it doesn't sound like they're giving them an annual budget to do fights throughout the calendar year. They're just distributing their pay-per-views.
That's it.
That's what it sounds like. How to interpret Errol Spence Jr. pursuing a second fight with Terrence given what happened in the first one. The only way that I can interpret it is this guy's cashing out. It was in 2020 when Errol Spence Jr. himself stated that after the car accident, he could have retired right then and right there, that he's here for a good time, but not a long one. And then you think about how he looked in the Crawford fight, how the Crawford fight played out.
Got his fucking ass kicked.
So many are hoping that if the fight is at a higher weight, they'll get a better and healthier Errol Spence Jr., but that's assuming that Terrence Crawford even allows it. That's assuming that Terrence is willing to have the fight
Above
147. And who says he is?
He doesn't have to.
I mean, there is no controversy there. There is no unfinished business that needs to be finished. What it is a lot of guys who backed the wrong horse and are having a bad case of sour grapes. And now they're just holding out hope that Errol can perform some miracle, that he can show up a completely different fighter than the fighter we saw the first time out.
You won't.
Not gonna. But you'd be hard-pressed to find a more petulant and childish, infantile, wide-eyed, naive fan base like Errol's fan base.
Morons.
The easy answer as to why Errol is deciding to do this instead of going another route and working on things, he's cashing out. He knows he doesn't have much time left. He doesn't have much more to give the sport of boxing. There are not that many big fights left out there, given where he was campaigning and where he means to campaign for what remains of his career. How many fights bigger than a Crawford fight are there for him at 154? How many fights bigger than a Crawford fight are there for him at 160?
This is arguably the biggest fight he could have.
I don't even think it's going to be all that big. I don't think this fight is going to bring in the numbers at the box office that the first fight did, given how the first fight played out.
What did it do? Between 600,000 and 700,000? This'll do less than that.
There's nothing left to see. Maybe it does, I don't know, 4, 5?
Maybe.
400,000, 500,000, 5 if they're lucky. There's no point. And there's nothing left to see. Terrence Crawford, he wants to move on. He's got bigger fish to fry. He wants Canelo. Canelo doesn't want him, though, all the same. Terrence wants to move on.
I don't blame him.
So if he doesn't feel like wasting any more time on an Errol Spence fight, and Canelo's not too keen on fighting him, he's not giving him the time of day, what else is out there for Terrence? Well, there is the winner of this weekend's fight, this weekend's junior middleweight title fight between Tszyu, the champion, and Brian Mendoza, the challenger. WBO president Paco Vercel has stated that Tszyu must fight a mandatory next should he win on Sunday. He also stated that it is up to Terrence Crawford to decide if he would like to be made mandatory for Tszyu at 154. Tszyu versus Crawford is a real possibility next year. And if Canelo Alvarez stands on his square, maintains that Terrence just isn't part of the plans for him. One interesting fight, would be Crawford versus Tszyu. The opportunity to become a 4-division champion, just not all the way up there at 168, at a more viable weight, 154. If he takes care of business with Errol Spence Jr., if that rematch actually happens...
If he beats Errol again.
And I think he would. I think he's going to. If Errol climbs back in there with him and Tim, if Tim takes care of business this weekend with Brian Mendoza, and I think he's going to, I am picking him to win that fight. This is a viable option when you consider who's there at 154, who's there at 160, who's there for Terrence, and what remains of Terrence's career. Beyond a Spence fight, a Spence rematch, a Tim Tszyu fight would be a bigger fight than most of what's out there.
Tim's got a country behind him.
How many fighters at 154? How many fighters at 160 can say that they have an entire nation behind them? Tim Tszyu is someone for Terrence Crawford to consider. If he doesn't consider him, if he doesn't want to fight him, doesn't want to give him the time of day, then who does Tim Tszyu end up fighting beyond a Brian Mendoza fight? You will notice that Josh Kelly of Great Britain, he sucks. But he is ranked at number 1, given his base style, that he's got that pure boxer base style. He wants to shake and shimmy, pot shot from the outside. He's not big on power, not big on volume.
More of a boxer than a brawler.
He's ranked at number 1, so it's conceivable that if Tim takes care of business this weekend, but Terrence doesn't want to give him the time of day, he's not interested, who he might fight next year is Josh Kelly. And you look at how frequent Tim Tszyu fights, it doesn't take Tim a long time to find an opponent. It doesn't take Tim a long time to make a fight. Josh Kelly, this would be Josh Kelly's best bet to fight for a world title. He's in position.
Say Kelly chickens out.
Say he doesn't want the title shot. Well, ranked at number 2 is Brian Mendoza, but Tim's already fighting him this weekend. Ranked behind Brian is Puerto Rico's own Xander Zayas, the top-ranked fighter. That top rank is very much invested in. I wonder how a set of negotiations between Tim and Xander would go if that's a fight that Xander wanted. Ranked right behind Xander is Russia's own Bakram Murtazaliev.
Decade.
The IBF order has come down. But Jermel Charlo, who still is IBF champion at this weight, to satisfy his mandatory in Bakram Murtazaliev, a guy who's been waiting for his crack at the apple since late 2019. He was mandatory before Jermel even won that belt.
In other words, he's busy.
I don't actually think Jermel is going to fight him. They've given Jermel Charlo approximately 30 days, 29 now, to negotiate a deal with him, with Bakram Murtazaliev. And being honest, I don't expect that fight to happen, so we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens for Bakram Murtazaliev. Ranked right behind Bakram is America's own Charles Conwell.
He flies pretty low on the radar, but he's decent.
Though much must come to pass before it becomes about Tim Tszyu versus Charles Conwell, who's ranked at number 5. Look at how many guys are ranked ahead of him. Things are going to get interesting at 154 pounds the next calendar year, and we'll see what shakes out. We'll see if we get Tszyu versus Crawford and what happens if we don't.
Things are getting interesting.